Steve.
So I just want to welcome everyone today. I know we will likely have people join and as we start, but want to be respected of your time. And so Jenni is joining us today. I had mentioned to you all that Jenni is an occupational therapist. She is also employed at Truro Hospital, but is one of Steve Gleason's primary caregivers. And so as that job evolved for her, also thankful to me is a consultant for Team Gleason. And so that means that I have Jenni's phone number, and anytime I have a question, I ask her and she responds, and I am so grateful. And so she is here today to talk to us about Bowel Protocol, something that was of interest to all of you and others. And as I said before, we are recording this. We are going to have it available somehow on our Team Gleason social media. I don't know if it's going to be the YouTube channel or what, but I will let you know. And so
I'm
without,
gonna grab paper for Hilda. She
okay,
asked me for some. She
okay.
wanted to make notes.
Jenni, Hilda is their caregiver. She works for a home health agency, and so and she is there all the time, helping Jim and Elaine take care of Jim. So
Okay, great.
so we will
And
we can go ahead and get started.
okay, yep, and I'm gonna so a little
Hey.
yep, all right, sounds good. I'm actually on my husband's computer and it keeps dinging something, so I told him to come down and mute it. So we might get interrupted for a second, but yes. Okay, so great. Well, good. I'm so excited to be with y'all today. It's kind of funny, but like I could talk about bowel training and programs for hours. So I've consolidated it into a brief, concise little nugget of information. But
Are
we
we
can
lucky?
use today. I was telling Kelly, was that?
I said, "Are we lucky?"
I know, right? I mean,
Are able to talk about that because we don't know anything about it.
yeah, it's yeah, and we okay, I know, and it's a crucial, critical part of everybody's day to day. And when I was, started the journey with ALS with Steve, it was amazing to me how little resources I had at the time. And so it just really, the evolution of a bowel program with somebody with ALS in my world was through trial and error and just everyday, just through experimenting with different things. So a little bit about my background. As Kelly said, I'm an occupational therapist. I have over 25 years experience and primarily with adults with neurological injuries and diseases, which is obviously how I came to meet Steve. At the time when I met Steve, I was working at Truro Hospital, which is a hospital here in New Orleans in an outpatient setting. And again, being an outpatient, I was very familiar with bowel training and bowel programs because of my spinal cord injury population, but I was never on the inpatient side, primarily in the hospital where bowel programs were initiated with people with spinal cord. So again, like the evolution of implementing spinal cord injury with somebody with ALS was kind of new for me. So again, like I wouldn't say like I'm not years of experience with bowel training, but but my years of experience have been primarily with Steve. I'm not, another disclaimer, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a dietitian. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. So all of this has just been like working, like being in the trenches, working with Steve, and just knowing that developing a bowel program, training his bowels was critical for him to live a daily life with ALS. So that's kind of like how it all started. Another disclaimer is that obviously everybody's body is different. So what works for one person is, not going to work for somebody else. It's not a one size fits all, but definitely what I'm going to lay out today are the strategies, the elements of a basic bowel program, and then you can kind of like pick and choose and, kind of put together your own formula to see what works for you. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is a bowel program? Yeah.
That there is a way to train someone's bowel. So that's interesting to me.
Yes. So isn't it like, it is fascinating. Like, we are creatures of habit and our bowels are creatures of habit. So it is possible to train the bowels, and it's bowel training, bowel program. It's remarkably possible. So it doesn't happen overnight. It takes patience, it takes commitment, but it can happen. So here's a little outline of how to make it happen. So obviously, yep. So a bowel program, it's going to be a combination of factors that are going to work together to regulate your bowels for establishing routine bowel movements. Like, what you want is for you to tell your bowels when you want them to move, not your bowels dictating to you your day. So the goal is routine bowel movements. The goal is to avoid unplanned transfers to the toilet or accidents. And we also want to avoid constipation. So those are the objectives of bowel training, a bowel program. So the strategies of a bowel program, there's 5 of them, and in no particular order, but obviously your nutrition and hydration play a big factor. The timing of the program, supplemental aids, your positioning, and possibly bowel stimulants. So I'm going to go through each one of those individually, and we'll kind of chat on each. Okay, so for nutrition and fluid intake, I could talk for hours on this, but basically, as you can imagine, your nutrition plays a big role in your bowel habits. Again, everybody has different nutritional needs. Everybody has different ways of consuming food currently, whether you're still taking food in by mouth or you have a feeding tube. So again, this is not a one size fits all. So, but nutrition does play a big role, and your hydration. I won't go into like the details, but we can definitely come back and have a follow-up. Like, if you're interested, my experience is with making what we call smoothies every day for Steve, which is taking real foods and blending them in the Vitamix, and those become his smoothies, we call them, and that is his primary source of nutrition. So I'm most familiar with being able to take and experiment with the foods that I know work well with Steve's body for a successful bowel program. So that, again, can become very individualized. We can meet again and just talk about the different elements of good smoothies. But again, everybody is coming at this with possibly different ways of consuming food, whether it might be like formulas that y'all get through insurance, or so, I mean, this could be like a whole separate topic, but again, your foods play a big role in a successful bowel movement. So just keep that in mind. All right, and then
Jenni,
on the topic of, yeah.
I just want to ask one question just for clarification. So, and those shakes or whatever you mix can be through his tube, but also can be something that you consume by mouth, correct?
Totally, because I mean, it becomes basically a smoothie. The lucky thing about being fed through a tube is that you don't have to taste it. So because what we're putting into his smoothie every day is like anything from like chicken and eggs and vegetables and nuts and what have you. I will say I have tasted his smoothies out of my own curiosity, and I love his lunch smoothie. It basically tastes like cream of chicken soup. But I would vomit if I had to eat the one that has eggs in it. So, I mean, it's like they're meant to go into a feeding tube. But so that's why if you are somebody who's still taking things in by mouth, we would have to, kind of do it very individualized to where it still tastes good. But it's also still
So for him,
nutritionally very beneficial for a bowel program.
for Steve, you're doing
Say it
it
again. Yep.
through a feeding tube for Steve is what you're doing? Does
Yes,
he do
ma'am.
these?
Yes,
Can you hear me very well?
I can. Yep.
Okay. So he does use a feeding tube. Is that what you're saying? So the
Yes.
flavor and smell issue when you're doing that, like it is when you're drinking it.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So right. Yes. So all of his foods, I mean, like, so I mean, within a smoothie, if you're taking foods in through a feeding tube, you get to be as, variety filled as you want because you're not tasting it, so that's
Yeah.
kind of that's a good thing about that. So I mean, hold on 1 second for my tech support. It's not a big deal, but you can
Just so you know, we're not hearing it, Jenny. So
oh, good. Okay, then don't worry about it. It's fine. Okay. All right, great. Good. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so again, like we could come back to this, or it might be individualized sessions where, because somebody's still consuming food by mouth and somebody else is getting food through smoothies, or somebody else isn't making their food, like nutrition becomes very individualized. But we do know that your nutrition plays a big role in the successful bowel program, because you're going to start to experiment with foods to learn which foods help your bowels, which ones kind of help stimulate your bowels, which ones help speed things up, which ones slow things down. It becomes a very unique experience of experimenting with foods to see which ones work for a bowel program. And then, but basically what you're looking for is a well-balanced, fiber-filled diet, and then also the correct amount of fluids that your body needs also. So that's just nutrition in a general overview. But again, nutrition and hydration play a big role with a bowel program. Okay, going into number 2 about timing. So timing of the program for bowel training is critical. So because we're trying to train the bowels, you need to pick a time of the day that you can be very consistent with. So you kind of have to like take pre-ALS out of the equation and figure out like what's working for your schedule now, and your caregiver, your up-down schedule. So keep in mind that, like, because timing is a big part of the success of the program, you need to pick a time of the day, whether it's going to be the morning, the evening, but it needs to be the same method, the same general time, like plus or minus an hour or so is okay, but the same method, the same time each day, so that your bowels will learn to work with you. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're gonna, yep. So you're gonna, and it will take time for your body to catch on, but again, like consistency and be patient, but your bowels will catch on that, like, okay, it's morning time and it's time to go. So that's a big piece of the puzzle. And again, work with your schedule, your caregiver schedule. It's also nice to work with, like, if you're, get up in the morning, you can coordinate the timing to where, like, your first transfer is to the shower chair or the commode, do your bowel program, take your shower, get back to bed, get dressed, get up in the chair. Or it might be you've been up all day and then you're going to transfer to the shower chair, do your bowel program, rinse off, go to bed for the night. So you want to kind of make it to where it's efficient, but it's also consistent. Sorry, dog. It's also very consistent timing every day. Crucial part of the equation. Now there are supplemental aids, as you can imagine. Like, there are things that are active stimulants to our bowels. So coffee being one of them, as we're probably all familiar with. Using like hot lemon water or warm lemon water is another stimulant. Obviously, something like prunes, and like we can explore various foods that act as stimulants to the bowels. There are other supplements, like you might want to add some Metamucil to your intake every day, which is just like a bulking fiber supplement. And also, I have had experience with people using Miralax, which is a laxative. You might need to use that titrated up or down depending on the way that your bowels are trending. So that's just a whole nother category of like using supplements to help you. Another thing with working with all the nutrition and the timing and the supplements is that like meals act as food acts as a stimulant to the gut. And so, in fact, let me pause for one quick second to say that the big thing with ALS and bowels is that if the bowels just basically they slow down. So everything's working. It's just very sluggish, is what I've kind of learned through over a decade working with Steve with ALS. So it's not that the bowels don't work; they just become again like very sluggish. So food acts as a stimulant. So if I know if his bowel program is scheduled for the morning, then I want him to eat breakfast, say like an hour before he's scheduled to do his bowel program. So timing your meals with the bowel program is also important. So if you're a nighttime bowel program person, then schedule your dinner, say about an hour before. If you're a morning bowel program person, schedule breakfast about an hour before. So things get tricky because like you're using food to help you, but then you also like it gets crazy with food. But it just because then it's like then I've learned with Steve where it's like, well, then I don't want lunch to be too stimulating. Like it gets very like creative with food, but that might just be his body. Again, everybody's bodies are different. All right, moving on. Positioning
Jim had
is
a
also
question
very.
right now. He says, I take Miralax
Yep.
and Senna every day. Is that advisable?
Wait, he takes what? Say that again.
Miralax and Senna every day.
Okay, and I'm not familiar with Senna. Is that a laxative?
Yes, it's a stool softener.
Stool softener. Okay, yeah, that's okay. I mean, like that's what you need to. That I have another ALS client friend of mine where he uses Miralax every day. He didn't initially, but he ended up having to have a colonoscopy, and for whatever reason, that just kind of like really slowed things down for him. And now he uses a half of a serving size of Miralax every day, and then just based on how his bowels are trending, he might add a little more or a little less. But yes, he uses Miralax every day. Steve used to use Miralax every day, and we're able to wean him off of that. So absolutely, like you're gonna have
by this protocol that you're following, you weaned him off by this protocol that you're following.
Yeah, just again like trial and error, like saying like when I met him, he was doing Miralax. It's like, okay, well, if your bowels are all of a sudden okay, like now the bowels are moving regularly, let's see if we can take you off of the Miralax.
Okay.
So yes. Yeah. So, and look, when you go to do things with trial and error, my philosophy is you don't want to do like with any kind of like research kind of like observations, you don't want to have too many changes of variables at one time. So like if I'm going to change something with Steve, I'm always doing one thing at a time. So like if I'm going to take him off of Miralax, I'm going to keep everything else consistent and just remove that and watch how his body responds. So I don't like to do too many changes at one time. I'd rather do one thing at a time, give them a few days, sometimes even a week or two, see what's happening, and then make from observations, make changes off of that. So, because that's really all we can, and that's all we can go off of. Like I'm like, it's just trends and observations and just speculation.
That makes sense.
So. Yeah. So definitely, like if your body, it's like, look, I've got great nutrition, this, that, but I need my Miralax, then absolutely use the Miralax. Use whatever supplement your body likes and is responding well to.
Can Hilda ask a question?
Yep.
Does this have with floppy colons?
Correct.
Colons stretched out?
Yeah, so it's, I mean, that's the other thing about, and I'll be touching on, like with ALS, because not to be too technical, but like with ALS being both an upper and lower motor neuron disease, you know, you have, it's hard to say like the nerve involvement that's happening in the gut area, because like you're dealing with different neuronal patterns that are going on with ALS. So like a floppy colon, in a sense, like, you know, like a spinal cord injury, who that they could be like, if like say somebody has a spinal cord injury, like who's low, like paralyzed, like from the waist down, who would be kind of more of like a lower motor neuron involvement, that would be kind of like a floppy colon. Then yes, like things would look different for that than somebody who has a higher up spinal cord injury. So like, and then so then you have ALS, lucky for us, where it's both upper and lower motor neuron. So it's kind of, again, that's where you're going to get very familiar with the colon and what works best for you. So it can possibly, yes, you just have to work with foods and timing and positioning, and it's again, it's very going to be very individualized.
Thank
So
you.
does that kind of answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. It's always worth a try, is what I say. Like when I pitched this idea to Steve over a decade ago, I was like, we've got nothing to lose other than like time. Like, let's just give it our best go to see if bowel training works for ALS. Because at the time, again, I had no resources to tell me whether it would or not, but it was like, let's just take a stab at it. And his body, and it worked. So it's like, you know, it's
Cool.
whether it's a floppy colon or, you know, very tight colon, like it's worth a try. It's just throw everything at it, give it some time, be consistent, be patient, and see if it works for you.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. All right. And then let's see, moving on to with positioning. Again, ideally, you know, for your bowels to empty, you want to be upright. You know, sitting up on toilet, shower
What?
chair, whatever your setup is. If getting
again.
up is not, okay. So
You
ideally for good, say it again. Can y'all hear me?
We
Yes.
can. There was some breakup in what you said. So if you'll start over with positioning, that will be great.
Okay. Yes. So ideally, preferably for your bowels to evacuate, you want to be upright in a seated position on the toilet, on the shower chair, roll-in shower chair, whatever your setup is. If getting up is not possible and you have to do your bowel program laying down in bed, another option is for you to lay on your left side, or even like have your knees turned towards the left, just because of the way that our intestines are in our body. The large intestines goes up our right side, they go across under our ribs and go down on our left side. So using gravity, if you have to, again, to do your bowel program in bed, consider that like laying on your left side might help facilitate a bowel movement. To take also when
So
you're
that
up, if
means
you're
you
able,
sit there a while.
you do sit there a while. Yep. So for the people that I work with, like Steve and some other fellas in our community, they'll incorporate it with again, like their shower routine. So because they're up, like when we get Steve up, it might be like, say, 15 to 20, 25 minutes of his bowel program, and then we move into the shower. So his whole time up in the shower chair is about an hour. So you have to give it, chisel out that time of your day to allow for that whole program to work. So again,
So
that's
he
why.
used air as his toilet in
Yes.
this regard?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So for equipment ordering, so like for people that are, like you're at the beginning stages with ALS, and there's that progression that's going to be happening, and equipment's going to be ordered. When it comes to bathroom equipment, you definitely want to work with somebody who, like somebody like me, to know that, like, yes, you want a shower chair that has a commode cutout. So like his shower chair is also like his toilet. Yes. And we
do have that.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Also part of the positioning is also like, I have Steve who, like, when he's doing his bowel program, his caregivers are very interactive. Like, we're pushing on his gut to help push. Whereas like another gentleman friend of mine, he's like, put me on the shower chair, and everybody walks out. So again, it's very personal about whether you want help. Like, we'll push on Steve's gut, again, following like the intestinal layout. We even use his cough assist to help with pressure, whereas like somebody else is like, put me on the shower chair, and I don't want anybody to be in there with me. So again, everybody is different. There's also another friend of mine who, he uses his Hoyer lift. Like, he'll get in the Hoyer lift and use that as his seated position, and just hover over the bed with a bucket on the bed, and like, that's his toileting setup. So there's no perfect setup. It's whatever works for you in your environment, with your caregivers, your situation. Again, you can be as creative as you want with this. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep. All right. And then, so moving on, and lastly is bowel stimulants. So again, not to be, when you're creating your bowel program, you want to be as least invasive as possible while still being efficient. But say you've got your good nutrition, you've got your proper hydration, you've got the timing down, you're up in the shower chair, seated on the toilet, whatever it is, and you just still need, there's one more thing that we can add to the equation, because you're dealing with a neurological situation, is we use, it's called an enemies. It's a little mini enema. And I don't have a picture. I meant to bring one home with me, but let me see. Let me pull it up.
What was this heading? What was this heading?
Bowel stimulants.
Okay, so it looks, oh, it won't stay. Take a screenshot. Okay, so an enema, it looks like this. So it's like a tiny, like a little mini enema. When I started Steve off with this, I told him, I said, just give me 6 weeks to use these enemas to help with bowel training. And 10 years later, we're still using the enema, and we use it every day. So however,
do you like it better than the little fleet ones? They're glycerin. Is this something different?
It's, it's a whole world of like all the different variants that are out there. Like, I'm familiar with like the little glycerin suppositories. That, again, I would say trial and error, because the one problem with the enemies is they're pricey. So I did go on their website this week to look, and you can request samples from the company, and you could even negotiate with them on pricing, because they're very committed to wanting their product to work for you and your budget. So I thought that was very interesting. So I don't have experience with other types of enemas or suppositories, but but I'm all for like try things, like get different products and see what works for you and your budget. But I did find it fascinating that enemies.
Could you spell it again?
Uh-huh.
Could you spell
Yep.
or show it?
Yep. Let me pull it up. So it's, whoop, wrong one. It's ENEMEEZ.
All right. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep. And they are, it's classified as like a stool softener laxative. I mean, so it's kind of like this little, whatever the little formula is, there's not a lot. So, I mean, you break the tip off. I do dip it in some mineral oil, or like you could do like some, some kind of lubrication and insert it. And it's just a little bit of liquid in there. But what it does is it's a small enema, and it's magical. It draws water into the colon, into the rectum, and it basically acts, it tells, whatever it does, it creates the contraction that's required to tell your bowels that it's time to go. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's amazing. And when, you think about it, it's like, and there's no long-term, like Steve's been using enemies for over a decade, and there's no long-term problem with using it. I mean, again, like the biggest problem is that it's pricey. Yes, let me see the Ducosol.
Show you this. It's a little small, but it says it's glycerin.
Yes. Yeah. So if that works, go for it. Like I would like whatever is in the enemies, it creates that contraction. And as long as you're getting that, like what the enemies does is like it creates that natural contraction that happens in the colon for the sphincter to be like, okay, it's time for the bowels to move. So if that does it for you, great. Yeah. So we use it, I mean, we use it every day. So it's just kind of, we've worked it into his bowel program, and it definitely helps.
And it works well, the glycerin one. But I want to get this and try it and see, because it may have another layer of assistance.
Yeah, yeah. And if you go to the website again, like let's see, it said, yeah, number one, you can request samples, which is nice. And then number two, it said that there's a phone number for financial assistance, because they again, it's pricey. Like we buy them off of Amazon, and a month supply is $70. So I mean, you're looking at like $250 a day for the little enema. But on the enemy's website, I did see where it says you can go and request for financial assistance to help with the cost. So I'd be curious if anybody tries that, I might look into it. But but other products that are on the market, it's basically like, it's a Ducosol Ducalax, I think, is another brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar with all the different, but that's the one that I'm most familiar with, is the enemies.
Well, but I know about that because we just went to the doctor. We take Senna, and lately, the last couple of years, we've been taking Senna Plus, and the Plus is Ducalax. And she just took us off that because she said it makes, because of the water, the added water that it draws, like you said, it makes everything it's too watery.
Right.
His movement is too watery. So she was trying to back off on the watery part. So I don't know. Well, but I still think we should try it.
Yeah. And again, and I think that's what's unique about the enemies, is that like, because it's mini, it's a mini enema. So it's very localized. Like that's all it's doing is stimulating the rectum that it's time to go. So it's kind of like, whatever it does to just charge the rectum, it works. So it's not like this big, like you're not flushing like a big fleet enema, like you're not throwing a bunch of water into it. Like it's just so mini, it's localized, and it's like, boop, time to go.
And you're not taking it oral, so it's not a systemic thing. So that's a good thing.
Yes. Now, with the enema, your transfer, like in y'all's situation, you more than likely, like you'll get to the shower chair first and then do the enema. And because, you're already sitting on the shower chair, you would insert the enemies and kind of like just hold it in there for a second so it doesn't just all ooze out. The way that Steve transfers, we do the enemies in bed, and then we transfer them to the chair. So again, like you have to figure out the time, like, because once you do the enema, you have anywhere from like 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes to respond. So once you do that enemies, you need to be planning your transfer or already do the transfer and do the enemies, because your bowels
It doesn't
will
just
go.
It doesn't just come right out.
It can. That's why, like, if you're sitting on the shower chair and you go to insert it in, I would recommend holding the little the enemies container like in the rectum just for like a few seconds, just so it doesn't just ooze right out. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. That was just, I
And
learned that from my nursing friends. What's that?
yeah, when you transfer out of the bed, all that time it could come out, seems like.
Exactly. So that's why I would say for your situation, I would, to start off, because everything is trial and error, I would say transfer to the shower chair first.
Oh,
and
okay.
then insert the enemies. I would go
Okay.
that route. Yeah. But when you go to insert the enemies, I would hold the little container in the rectum just for like 30 seconds or so you don't just squirt it in and it all oozes out. I would just kind of hold it, like kind of block it in there for like a 30 seconds.
Right. Jim has a
Yeah.
question. He says, I worry that if I use it regularly, it will cease to work.
I know that was our concern too, but it doesn't. That's all I
Really?
mean, yeah. I mean, again, like that's how, because you think like, oh, well, your body will just get used to it and it won't respond anymore. But that has not been our experience.
Okay.
Yep. And other people's too, like other people in the community here in New Orleans that I work with, like they use it every day also. So, yeah. And again, I can only go off of our direct experience, but using it every day has not been a problem.
Good.
Yep.
Wait, Jenny?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Hey, it's Barbara Lynn, sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that part of the reason the body's probably not building up any sort of resistance to it is part of the reason the body's not building up any resistance to it is because it's mimicking what the body already does, which is sends the electronic stimulus, right, basically through the bowels.
Yes.
So there's no reason that you would build up an immunity to that because your body's already doing it.
Right. And exactly. Exactly. Beautiful explanation. Yeah. And it's so minimal, like it's a little mini, it's very local, and absolutely. That's well said. Thank you, Barbara Lynn. Yeah. Yep. I agree. And those were the things, like, starting off with this, like, over a decade ago with Steve, again, like there weren't any resources for us to tap into. So again, like we kind of went into it like a blind exploration of like, I don't know what's going to happen if we keep using it every day. But I mean, we had no other options. So we just did it, so, and that it's proved to be a very effective tool in our tool chest of things to help to trigger the bowels. And all of this being said, this isn't 100%, like bowel programs are beautiful, but they're not 100% foolproof. So it's not to say that you will never have a bowel accident. I mean, they do happen. But for the most part, with bowel training, you can get very consistent with scheduling it, on a routine basis. So it minimizes accidents, I would say. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. If y'all, are there any other questions or thoughts?
Brian just joined, and but I did let him know that we were recording it. And I too would have a question that any lists that you had, we all like lists. So
Okay,
if
yep.
you want to share those, I can also share with
Okay,
everyone.
yep. No,
Um,
definitely. I can write this up for you guys to have as like a little outline. And speaking of that too, like with nutrition, like Steve, working with Steve, again, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a dietitian, but I've just kind of like thrown myself into the world of learning about foods and how they, and I know Steve's body, but I will also say this, like through the journeying nutrition with Steve, um, when we first started the bowel program with Steve, his issue was constipation. So his foods, what we learned was that like variety was key. There was no food that was off the table. Like we were big with variety. Um, his smoothies were different every day, but kind of using the same kind of general formula, but like different every day. Different foods, great variety helped out a lot. Well, then he got sucker punched with a stomach viruses, and that changed our whole approach to where now he's on very his smoothies are now the same smoothie every day. Like we use no variety, and I had to explore with him like the foods that didn't upset him. So like I've journeyed with him on both ends of the spectrum, trying to speed things up and then trying to slow things down. So it was just amazing on my journey with him, like how different foods can, go through his system too fast, others go too slow. And I had to find the foods that go at like the right pace. So journeying food with him, and Barbara Lynn, this is kind of like your forte also, isn't it? Is this, I think I have, yeah, putting you on the spot. But
No,
like,
no, it's totally fine. I actually was just literally just saying to Colin that I feel like I've been preparing my whole life for this.
yes, yeah. So right.
Yeah,
So I
I
mean,
mean,
like,
definitely, I mean, we even with Colin not needing any sort of feeding tube yet or anything like that, we're already putting together like lists of the foods that work for him and the foods that don't work for him. And even just yesterday, he said, can we please get a different type of bread because this is no longer working, right? So it's
yeah,
constant trial. It's even when you know your body, it's constant trial and error. And just to second what you said earlier, there's a lot of importance to sticking with a routine for a little while to figure out if it works, because otherwise you have to do like elimination diets, which
yes,
yeah, which can be, they're doable, they're just a lot of work.
yes. Which I ended up having to do with Steve. Like the whole, like I got introduced, like a, you know, beautiful use of the internet, like the whole FODMAP, and like
Yeah.
I went down that road with him, and we did like a huge elimination, and that's basically what he's on now, is like a very uh, the foods that I know work for his system. But, say 8+ years ago, it was all about variety. There were no limits on food. And now his body is like, oh no, like these are the exact foods that his body can tolerate.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's almost like
so
they become a fine-tuned machine.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, so, and then, yeah, so it's, I mean, it's like Barbara Lynn and I are saying, it's a ton of trial and error. Take notes, like bowel movement journals, um, pay attention to your body, like Colin said, like he recognized that a certain bread wasn't agreeing with him. Um, yeah, so it's not, again, not a one size fits all, but I can definitely give you some, like we could even have a whole nother session just on food, but the whole, like, even like when it comes down for rice, like brown rice versus white rice, like my trend with Steve is like he does eat brown rice on a daily basis, But if his stomach gets upset, like if there's diarrhea or something happening, then I'll switch him to white rice. So like we do different, it's not like, oh no, this is like, it's got to be this. Like, no, like we're always paying attention, constantly paying attention to what his bowels are, what his body's up to.
My
So-
dog, I'm sorry, my dog is telling me that it's time for his bowels. So
Oh. Is this his routine, noontime?
if we're 10 minutes off his routine, he makes sure he tells us.
Yes.
Jenny,
Good.
Chris asked, I don't know if you can see the chat, but she asked if she could get the recipes of the smoothies that you fix. She uses smoothies currently in the food that she is feeding, but they have a peg tube, and so she would like to see what it is that you're using, if you could
Yep.
share.
Yep, not a problem. Yes. And again, that's, I have kind of like an outline that I've created years ago with just like, just kind of like a basic gist of an outline of the foods that you want to include. And so one thing I've never done, like, because I'm not a nutritionist and dietitian, but like calorie counting and macronutrient, like that's not my forte. There are different apps, where you can enter all the foods in to check for calories and nutrients and stuff like that. But again, I can't advise on like calories and all that kind of stuff. But you can always, use an app to help you figure out if it's meeting your caloric needs. But basically what I would be giving you are like the gist of like food ideas to throw together for a smoothie. So I can definitely send that to you, Kelly. Yep.
Okay.
Ask a question.
Yes.
What
Yep.
if the mother is weakening to push the bowel out? Is there a massage that we could do on him? Like
Yep.
just rub colon?
Yes.
Would that help?
Yes, absolutely. So abdominal massage, and you can even go on YouTube and look that up. But if you type in abdominal massage, but basically going up your here, I'm gonna get up on the chair. They're going like up your right side, across and down is the pattern of the massage. So you're following up the large intestines, you're going across and going down. Also, even just kind of like just going top to bottom is helpful. But a good abdominal massage before you give the enema, or once you're up in the chair, or like, just kind of working that into your protocol is wonderful. Yes. So again, like for Steve, even while he's having his bowel movement, like we're literally like pushing on his gut to help evacuate the stool. So if that's something that you want to do, that's fine. Yep. One thing to add is digital stim, like actually going in with like a gloved finger and going around the rectum, is something that works for spinal cord injury. But I tried that with Steve. I didn't have good success with it. But I mean, that is another kind of tool in the tool chest, is like a digital stim where, the caregiver goes in and just kind of inserts a finger and goes around the rectum just to kind of help stimulate, or you might even be pulling stool out. I have not found that to be effective with ALS, but again, everybody's body is different. That is something that's common in the neurological world with spinal cord injury. But me personally, I have not found that to be successful with ALS, but it's something that I did try with Steve. I think I gave him hemorrhoids, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
it's something to mention, but I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, that helps. I didn't find it helped. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It's
So we kinda-
dangerous to do a finger stimulation, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's actually, we've learned that it's actually very helpful for the upper motor neuron spinal cord population. It works wonders. But I mean, I'm not going to say not to try it, but just based off of our experience, like I wouldn't recommend it, just in my personal experience.
Seems like the enema tip would serve the same purpose as the stimulation. That when you put the little in.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't, because you're not getting that rectal wall. You're not hitting the rectal wall with the little tip. Like digital stim is when, digital
Okay.
stim is when you're literally like your finger is rubbing around the rectal wall to kind of excite the neurological response of a bowel movement. But
Okay.
Again, I can only go off of my experience with it, and it's worth mentioning if people want to try it, but I didn't find it to be successful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Let's see. I'm trying to, I want to see if Brian has any questions. Brian, do you have any questions? Is Steph?
No.
No?
He's got thank you to say.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Never mind. I'm glad I muted you. Never mind. I'm going to go back and mute you. Well, of course, if there are any other questions, just let me know and I can pass those along. Also, I did hear Jenny offer that if there are particular diets you'd like to explore together, or if there's an interest in having a nutrition session, we can certainly do that. So let me know if that's something. I know Elaine indicated interest in that, and so we can certainly go back to it. But again, this was recorded. We will have it available for your viewing as well as others. We're also going to get the lists that Jenny prepared her presentation with. And also she has agreed to share the recipes for the smoothies. So Jenny, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep. Yeah, no problem. All right.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yep. Of course.
Nice to
All
meet
right.
you.
Yeah, nice to meet you
I would
too.
love the food conversation. If y'all ever want to do that? That would be great.
Yeah. Barbara Lynn, I will rope you in to we
I
can
would
work
love
together on
that.
that. Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Okay, great.
Yes. All right.
We'll figure that out. All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you all. Have a great
Yep.
rest of your day. Mardi Gras, don't forget to. And I'll talk
Thank
to you all very soon.
Yes.
All right.
All right. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's see. I'm gonna